City Council. Welcome everyone. Today the subject is Police Oversight Commission. I'll turn it over to you.
Quit hogging the paper. You're supposed to be passing that down. I think I do.
Darian gave me this.
All right. Should give you Smith, give you trouble with
They
time.
might not have it.
I may already have, I think I have the
She
presentation.
needs all the help you can get.
Yeah, I've got
you
it.
know.
I'll take one.
Oh, here you go. Thanks.
My laptop is urgent.
No, I got one.
I'm trying to figure it out.
mayor always brings popcorn. I brought a sausage biscuit. I feel like I should have brought one for everyone.
Oh, yeah, next
They're really
time.
freaking good. Really good.
Where is it from?
Starbucks. Am I
Okay.
allowed to say that out loud?
Good.
That's not on camera.
We're
is
in the
it?
Pacific Northwest, sure.
Double smoked bacon? All right. That's where it's at. Love it.
Good morning, everyone.
Local commerce.
Are we okay to get started?
Yeah, please. I turned it over to you 5 minutes ago.
Sorry, couldn't hear. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Thank you, members of council, invited guests. For the record, my name is Samir Kanal. I'm the Advisory Boards and Commissions Manager for the Community Safety Division at the City of Portland, and in that capacity, I'm the Project Manager for the Police Accountability Commission. To give some overall context on the Police Accountability Commission and the broader efforts to create a police oversight board, we will hear from Community Safety Transition Director Mike Myers and CSD Deputy Director Elizabeth Perez, as well as from Dr. Leroy Haynes, Chair of the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform. After that, we'll start hearing from members of the commission and working our way through the portions of the presentation that's in the run of show on page 2, briefing book. We'll pass it over to Director Myers at this time.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having us here today. For the record, my name is Mike Myers. I'm the Community Safety Transition Director for the City of Portland. As you know, in November of 2020, Portland voters approved a ballot measure, 26-217, requiring charter changes to the Community Police Oversight Board. I was hired as the Community Safety Transition Director on April 1st, 2021.
I'm
And
sorry,
between-
can we stop for a minute? What is all that crinkling? Where is it? Do we know? Mike, what kind of
It's
mic
not-
are
I
you
don't-
using?
It shouldn't be me. I think it's coming from the desk there. I heard it once Samir started talking, so I think it might be coming from the desk out front in the council chamber.
Okay, yeah, is there any way for
It's-
us to mute microphones, or do we have to do it individually?
It's clear now.
They're all fixed. Okay, well, let's see if we can live with it. You got drowned out, so about the last
Yeah,
5
let me start over,
sentences.
Mayor. Thank you for that. I appreciate. I was having the same feedback. Mayor, let me start over, and good morning to you, Mayor, and good morning, council members. Thank you for having us here today. For the record, my name is Mike Myers. I am the Community Safety Transition Director for the City of Portland. As you know, in November of 2020, Portland voters approved a ballot measure, 26-217, requiring charter changes to the Community Police Oversight Board. I was hired as the Community Safety Transition Director on April 1st, 2021. And between that date and July of 2021, it was decided to locate that work of the Police Accountability Commission in the Community Safety Division under our leadership and begin building out the structure to support this very important work. We quickly developed a job description for the Police Accountability Commission project manager, posted it for recruitment. Interviews for the position yielded several excellent candidates, from which we selected Samir Kanal, who's in front of you today, to ultimately lead the project. Samir was hired and started his position in September of 2021. Commission membership was selected, approved, and seated, and work began in December of that year. The PAC membership is made up of individuals who were all voted in by City Council to represent several interests. Some examples of those interests are people from communities that have historically been overpoliced, people from organizations that provide support to historically overpoliced communities, people representing community justice member organizations, and members who represent small businesses. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank this council on behalf of the Community Safety Division staff and the Police Accountability Commission for the 2.5-month extension to ensure thoughtful quality recommendations. I will now turn it over to Deputy Director of the Community Safety Division, Elizabeth Perez, who will present the purpose for today's work session. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. My name is Elizabeth Perez, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Community Safety Division. The Police Accountability Commission has conducted roughly 200 hours of public meetings and community engagements. They've participated in hundreds of hours of research and have participated in dozens of difficult conversations to get to this point. And so I want to highlight the work that they have done thus far. And we're getting close to the end. This work session for you all is an opportunity to hear what they've done thus far, to provide some input and ask questions to make sure that the PAC has some feedback from you as they finish up their work in the next couple months. And I'm also here just to do a little bit of housekeeping. We have a lot to get through today, and we have reserved about 35 minutes at the end for questions, so that we do ask that you hold all questions until the end, and we'll hopefully get through answering some of those questions as they present. So with all of that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Leroy Haynes. Thank you for being with us today. And thank you for having us. We're excited to get through this. Dr. Haynes, you're muted. This hybrid is never gonna get used to that.
To our eminent Mayor Ted Willer, distinguished members of the Portland City Council, to the members of the Police Accountability Commission and representative of the various staff members. I am the Reverend Dr. Leroy Haynes Jr., President of the Albina Ministry Alliance, Chairperson of the AMA Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, and formerly served as co-chairperson of the ballot measure 26-217 for the creation of the Independent Police Accountability Commission. I would like to take a few moments to put us in a historical context on the call by the citizens for an Independent Citizen Police Accountability Commission, since most of the present city council were not seated at this time when this charter initiative was passed by the citizens of Portland. The present charter initiative for an independent police oversight board emerged out of a mass civil rights nonviolent movement for justice and police reform, as in 2003, following the killing of an unarmed Black woman named Kendra James by a Portland police officer. It was out of the outrage of citizens in Portland, including Blacks, white, Latinos, various faith traditions, different genders, and a variety of political perspectives, covering all parts and neighborhoods of the citizens of Portland. This movement led to the creation of the Albina Ministry Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform that includes also all sections of the city of Portland, races, faith, tradition, and gender. Major organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, the League of Women Voters, the ACLU, the Latino Network, Jobs for Justice, Mental Health, labor unions, the EMO, bishops of various traditions, basic right organ, and other grassroots organizations. This movement grew in the city of Portland as each unarmed shooting by the police bureau happened. It included the death of Mijah Poot, the death of Jahar Perez, the death of Aaron Campbell, James Chassie, and many others. The AMA Coalition's second goal was to create an independent citizen police oversight board with the power to compel testimony. Hence, the vision for an independent police oversight board came well before the death of George Floyd and the mass marches that followed. Another goal of the AMA Coalition with Justice was the call for an audit of the police bureau that led subsequently to the enhanced amicus curiae and the present day settlement agreement. This indigenous movement of all races, classes, genders, young and old, all section of Portland eventually led to the charter ballot measure of 26-217, where over 82% of the voters in the city of Portland passed this measure, creating a new independent police oversight system. Why? Why did this happen? The citizens of Portland fully understood that the previous systems of police accountability were not effective in helping to create the kind of community police bureau they envisioned. There was previously in 1982, the Police and Internal Investigation Auditing Commission that failed to produce an effective accountability system that we call PAC. In 2001, PAC was replaced by the Independent Police Review, IPR. In 2020, the voters spoke definitively and clearly by 82% for the change of the city charter to establish a new independent oversight board. This was also supported by a unanimous vote by the city council, thanks to the former Commissioner Joanne Hardesty and Mayor Wheeler. Why did they support this? The citizens of Portland fully understand that we need police, but they want a police force that is accountable, that is fair, that is just, that is reasonable in the treatment of all their citizens with dignity, justice, and equality. Finally, no system works effectively in a democracy if there's no fairness, no just, no equal application of the law and accountability. The citizens of Portland have spoken very clearly, definitive in the support of the implementation of this measure. It is important that the city council honor the will of the people ballot. If the city of Portland is going to have a true community 21st century police force, it must create trust, public trust, and those in the community who have faced assault in both crime and abuse by the police. Trust is the foundation of 21st century police. There's no contradiction between focusing on public trust and confidence and actually attacking crime and the reduction of crime. Indeed, building public trust and legitimacy in the police force actually work for the benefit of both. It is where we can get witnesses when crime takes place, and that we can get support for the Portland Police Bureau. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you to the Reverend Dr. Leroy Haynes for your welcome, for your remarks, for your presence today. And I think it's mine.
Can we switch that mic out? There's something wrong with it.
There you go. Switch Rooney.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Much better.
Thank you to the Reverend Dr. Leroy Haynes for your welcome, your remarks, your presence today, and for your leadership on this issue over many years. It's been an honor to get to work with you throughout this process, and we look forward to getting to continue to do so. Council asked the PAC to define accountability. We'll show the full definition in a moment, but as part of that process, the PAC discussed the goal of accountability, which is relevant to Dr. Haynes's remarks and reflects Dr. Haynes's note about fairness, community, and officers alike. Quote, "The goal of accountability is not punishment or retribution. Accountability requires a fair, transparent, independent, and impartial system that all parties trust," end quote. And that's a good segue into what the PAC was asked to do to create that fair, transparent, independent, and impartial system, which is what has been enshrined in the city charter by City of Portland voters. For this, I'll pass it over to Commission Member Timbits.
I'm Tim Pitts. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Police Accountability Commission. First off, we had a great meeting with Commissioner Gonzalez last month, and he reminded us that first and foremost, fidelity to the voters is important with this creation. At this point, we're going to give a very brief overview of the parameters that the charter gave to the commission. So as we just heard, and we know, Charter Section 2-10 was referred to the voters in July 2020 by the City Council as ballot measure 26-217. It was approved with the support of 82% of the City of Portland voters that November. The charter has many provisions, some of which we'll be highlighting later today, but the overall ethos is captured in the mission that it gives to the Community Police Oversight Board to independently investigate PPB sworn employees and supervisors thereof promptly, fairly, and impartially, to impose discipline as determined appropriate by the board, and to make recommendations regarding police practices, policies, and directives to the Portland Police Bureau, and with a primary focus on community concerns. The charter text squarely centers the community voice in this process and requires the board to be independent of the police while simultaneously being respectful, fair, and impartial. The City Council required the Police Accountability Commission to work within the charter framework and ensure that the new system does as well. Now I'll pass it back to Jamie.
For the record, thank you. For the record, my name is Jamie Ridgway. I am the Police Accountability Commission Research and Policy Coordinator. So the PAC was tasked with implementing the charter and fulfilling a set of tasks from council resolutions in line with federal and state law, including the settlement agreement. The PAC started meeting in December of 2021, and by the end of March, it had split its tasks into 6 distinct phases of work. These are the phases of work, and on the next slide, it'll outline them in more detail to explain what they are. The first phase was self-organization of the PAC, including bylaws and developing these phases of work themselves. The second phase was evaluating the current system in Portland and also looking at how other cities and counties have addressed accountability and how experts in the field propose solving some of the problems that arise. The third and fourth phase, which is most of what will be presented today, discuss the functions of the new system. What will it do? The form the new system will take, how it will do that, and what will it be respectfully. Together, they form the destination of this process, what the system will look like when it's implemented fully. As Elizabeth mentioned, there's also a fifth phase, which is in progress currently and includes a transition plan and broader system context, as well as the final phase to take conceptual agreements and convert them into legal text with the inclusion of feedback from the community, council, and more.
The PAC has also met with a number of experts and affected parties, including law enforcement officials. We do start this list with every member of City Council, as well as Chief Lavelle and Deputy Chief Fromm and Portland Police Association President Aaron Schmautz. The PAC has also met with multiple parts of the current system, including multiple times with Independent Police Review, as well as Citizen Review Committee leadership, PPB's Professional Standards Division, including Internal Affairs, and the Police Review Board's coordinator at PPB.
My turn. Good morning, everybody. My name is Austin Foster. I am the Community Engagement and Communications Coordinator for the Police Accountability Commission, and really excited to be doing this work session with y'all today. Okay, let's see here. The PAC, I'm going to give you just a brief rundown kind of what we've done for community engagement in the last 8 months since I've been here. The PAC has met with community groups and legal experts, including the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition, the Mental Health Alliance, the Oregon Justice Resource Center, Don't Shoot Portland, the Portland Business Alliance, and Pacific Northwest Family Circle, which we have a couple members of our commission who are actually in that group. The commission has also met with experts on this process, including the Department of Justice about the settlement agreement and the city attorney's offices about many legal-related issues in this work, like Derek Bradley and Heidi Brown, who developed the text of the charter. And in the last 8 months since I have been here, we have done 10 community engagement events throughout the city with a huge plan to do more this summer.
Thank you. This concludes the context-setting portion of the work session, and we'll now hand it over to the various PAC members to present about the discussions and the draft decisions made so far by the PAC, starting with Commission Member Angie Tomlinson.
Good morning. My name is Angie Tomlinson. I go by she, her pronouns. For each section, we're going to note what the PAC was asked to do and what parameters we had to work within, and then we'll explain what we did. There's a one-page document here for each section with the parameters. This starts on page 3 of your briefing book. The Police Accountability Commission was mandated to identify current barriers that have stymied the work of Portland's police oversight systems. Between April and October of 2022, we worked to identify these barriers so that afterwards we could start to make suggestions on how to overcome these barriers. Because we seek to solve these problems in our overall work, this document is the problem statement of the Commission's work. The Commission identified several barriers to police accountability in the current system. Many of these were identified by briefers, including police briefers. Our research found that the system's complexity was a barrier to accountability for both law enforcement and the community. We found the system was inaccessible, lacked transparency, lacked resources for the community oversight, and was biased. We found that the current police accountability system was not trusted or perceived to be effective at reducing misconduct. To give one example about the complexity, we actually looked at 4 different flow charts that supposedly explain the current system, and there are a lot of contradictions between them. The PAC is developing a system where one flow chart can give clarity to everyone. When I say we found this, it's not just from our own research. It's also from hearing briefers. Deputy Chief of Police Mike Fromm talked about all the different steps in this process and how it led to confusion. PPA President Aaron Schmautz talked about how the length of the process and lack of clear direction deprives officers of what they need.
Good morning, Commissioner Angie. Would you mind covering my slide? I'm on the maps.
Keep reading. Yes.
Thank you.
Of course. We were generally very careful in sticking to our scope of work. One exception was that the City Council only required the PAC to look at barriers to police accountability. However, it was important to us that the PAC process be fair and unbiased. So we took a holistic view and recognized that there are parts of the system that are working and could be maintained. Specifically, we found that the CRC's transparency and the regular reporting of the system were good practices. Although the system had broad accessibility problems, its language, access, and interpreters are working. The fact that their staff are already civilians who come highly qualified and pursue investigations with review and rigor are all best practices. The PAC identified the option of mediation as a way of quickly resolving some cases, giving direct feedback from the community members to officers, and allowing closure in some cases for both officers and community. Finally, the connection between these processes and the police evaluation and the option of findings beyond discipline of corrective action have been positive but used inconsistently. We're now going to start talking about the functions of the new system, beginning with how the new Oversight Board accesses information. For that, I'll pass over to Commissioner Sophia.
Might have her on mute just a moment.
I'm happy
we'll
to start, and then
yeah.
we can pass over to Commissioner Sophia when she arrives. So for this section, we had a charter framework that created a lot of parameters for the Oversight Board's access to information. This is going to start on page 5 of your briefing book. The charter empowers the Oversight Board to subpoena and compel documents, to gather and compel all police records to the extent allowed by federal and state law, and the ability to compel statements from witnesses and officers. It also says that officers can face discipline for not taking part fully and honestly in investigations. That is the voter-approved text, and we have drafted a structure for. Another thing that the PAC found is that most of these powers and abilities are already written into city code for the independent police review. And so the PAC's recommendations are generally to retain existing code with some adaptations and adjustments. Subpoena power already exists for the independent police review, and the PAC recognized this as a best practice, so this would be extended to the new oversight board. The same exists for access to police records. In a couple cases, this would be expanded so that the oversight board could use data from databases if relevant to an investigation. The PAC also envisions that the oversight board could get assistance from the DA's office with issuing subpoenas. Compelling testimony is something new under the charter, but it extends a power PPB currently has to the new oversight board. Together, these will ensure that the oversight board can investigate administrative misconduct complaints quickly and comprehensively. Although the charter didn't require this, we also added a section on data protection, confidentiality, and stewardship. We wanted to recognize that if the Oversight Board accesses police data, they need to uphold the Portland Police Bureau's standards on protecting that data. And if they're using other data, for example, a witness sends in cell phone footage, that this data needs to be secure. We also want to ensure that medical data was only requested where strictly relevant and that HIPAA protections would be respected. Finally, we wrote about the Oversight Board having prompt and comprehensive access to body-worn camera footage when investigating. Our document was developed through January of this year, and part of this was subsequently included in bargaining in April of this year. The next function of the new system is officer accountability, how the new complaint process will work. For that, I will pass it over to Charlie.
There we go. Lusan, that's good morning in my language. My name is Charlie Michelle Wesley. I was the co-chair for the Subcommittee of Police Accountability. And like to share that the charter framework for this section, which starts on page 4 of your briefing book. The first thing mentioned as a mission for the Oversight Board is to independently investigate promptly, fairly, and impartially, and to determine the appropriate corrective action to impose. There's a minimum list of things to investigate, as well as a charge to determine what else should be investigated. The charter generally provides the Oversight Board with an authority to determine corrective action when there are findings of misconduct, and specifically states that any refusal to truthfully and completely answer all Oversight Board questions is itself misconduct. Council asked the Police Accountability Commission to explain how the board imposed correction action within any due process and/or just cause requirements. I will pass this on to Commissioner Catherine.
Good morning. I'm Catherine McDowell. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the current co-chair of the subcommittee on the transition plan, and I previously was one of the co-chairs of the full commission for phase 4. So the commission's working definition of accountability, which the council charged us to develop, is set forth on this slide, or at least in part. And it states that accountability is a comprehensive system of checks and balances aimed at ensuring that when law enforcement fails to carry out their duties properly, including when their actions are damaging to other individuals or the community at large, they are held responsible through a fair and transparent process. The process that we have been working on is built primarily around the council requirement that the PAC develop a, quote, workflow of investigations and processes, unquote. The quote is from our charge from the council. And we are to do that to address administrative misconduct. We found that housing all of these functions under the Oversight Board's umbrella would be less complex, more transparent, and easier for officers and the community to understand than the current non-unified system. Additionally, we believe, as council does, that this process must be perceived as legitimate and fair. So the process we designed ensures a level playing field for all. On the subject of transparency of the process, we were guided by community input as well as input from the police department and folks associated with the police department, including PPA President Schmaltz, who said that, quote, "The public deserves to know what the investigation process is and that it is firmly grounded in truth-seeking."
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm appearing before you today as a member of the Commission, and I was a co-chair of the Officer Accountability Subcommittee along with co-chair Michelle Wesley spoke earlier. I recall that the chief and deputy chief told PAC about being relieved not to have to make disciplined decisions, which can allow them to speak more freely. It can also cut out any internal politics that can influence the current system. Anyone can file a complaint with a new oversight board, including police officers. Any potential misconduct that affects a community member is envisioned to go to the new oversight board, including automatic investigations of incidents that are described in the charter, such as deadly force. Other allegations that will be covered will include constitutional violations, dishonesty, and discourtesy. It also includes neglect of duty, which reflects that PAC heard concerns from community members in some instances about over-policing and from others about under-policing. Only types of complaints that wouldn't go to the new oversight board in the system are, or normally, are complaints filed by officers about other officers, about conduct that doesn't affect community members. For example, this can include an officer using a police vehicle for personal use. These would normally go to another city process within PPB or at Human Resources. However, if the complaining officer wants the oversight board to investigate, they can choose to send the complaint to the board instead.
Commissioner Wesley, you're on mute.
Thank you. I was asking for the flow chart, and there it is. Okay. The new system that the Police Accountability Commission envisions will have up to 5 steps: intake, investigations, hearings and findings, corrective action, and appeals. If the hearing finds there was misconduct, then based on the discipline guide, the board's panel will determine corrective action. The officer would have the ability to request an appeal if they disagree. And complainants can also appeal if they disagree with the findings. Commissioner Dan Handelman?
Still is a second look at the case where the panel looks at the findings and determines whether they agree with them, want to make new findings, or send it back for further investigation. Generally, this will be a new panel of the board, set of members who weren't involved in making the previous decision.
Greetings, Simab Husseini, he, him, his pronouns, current Phase 5 co-chair for the subcommittee on broader systems. There are also processes that are designed for lower level cases that can help take the burden off of the investigative systems where it is not needed, and help some cases achieve closure faster for officers and community members alike. As part of the intake process, a complaint that doesn't necessarily require a full investigation can become an informal complaint to the officer's supervisor or go to mediation. If these conversations are unsuccessful, they'd still go to a full investigation. Back to slide 31. This is one of the ways the Police Accountability Commission has addressed Commissioner Mapp's feedback, and there should be methods to ensure police are able to grow from the experience and be better in the future, while also ensuring that the city can meet its required timelines for resolving administrative misconduct complaints.
Hi, this is Dan Handelman again. I just want to apologize. The flow chart went by you very quickly. Just if we can pull up the flow chart again really quickly, staff. I realized what we were trying to do in this part of the script we cut out. So just if we can pull up the flow chart again. Starts with the intake process, and then the next step under that is the full investigation process. You scroll down to that. Then the staff will be conducting the investigation. And then the third step, hearing and finding stage, where the board is reviewing the case and deciding what the findings should be. So the next step after that would be that if there are findings of misconduct, there's going to be corrective action. And if the officer or the complainant doesn't like those findings, then they go to the fifth stage, the appeal stage. So again, I apologize for that confusion. So throughout the process, though, what's new is that there's going to be an advocate or complaint navigator provided by the board to support the complainant, help them understand what's happening. This is modeled off of the existing appeals process advisor at the Citizen Review Committee, which is limited to the appeals part of the process. So for this process, it will be extended throughout from the beginning to the end. There will be this advisor will be, or the advocate rather, will be one of 3 people the complainant can have as a support person throughout the process. And officers can also have up to 3 people as support, including their collective bargaining unit representative. Either officers or community members can also bring attorneys, peers, or community support.
So this process was designed to create a level playing field for all participants in several ways. First, the investigations by the Oversight Board and not Police Internal Affairs, and decisions by community members, not police, will increase fairness for all, including for officers. Second, as just mentioned, both officers and complainants can have up to 3 support persons with them. Slide 33, please. And following up on feedback we received from Commissioner Rubio, which is on the slide here, complaint navigators are added to ensure that community members always know what's happening in their investigation, which is how we address this comment from Commissioner Rubio about complainants not knowing the status of their complaint under the current process. I will say that the PAC does not have the ability to change one aspect of the system that will still favor police and ensure the process is fair to police, which is that they will have 3 avenues with which to appeal beyond what we have in our flow chart. Filing a grievance, which can lead to arbitration, going to the city's civil service board, or asking for a due process hearing. Moving to slide 34, please. I will say one key difference, again, following up on the feedback we got from our briefings with you, is that the new system will not have city council hearing appeals of officer misconduct cases, something that we heard concern about, especially from the mayor. In addition, although the charter does not require this, the PAC included that at the end of an investigation, information would be sent to PPB for them to analyze and present their views. During the hearing, this analysis would be presented, and leadership from the training division would be invited to give information about police policy, training, and procedure prior to board members making a decision. This proposed procedure is carried over from the existing police review board process.
Finally, we're going to mention that when the board is evaluating a complaint, they have options for findings that aren't only about whether an officer violated policy. It's also about how the system can improve. This will include, in our proposal, the board can find there was a policy failure, for instance, that the officer was within policy not face discipline, but the policy itself needs to change. There are also similar findings regarding training, supervision. So next up is structural oversight, and I'll pass it over to Commissioner Debbie Iona.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. I'm Debbie Iona, she, her. I was one of the co-chairs along with Faith Aiken of the Subcommittee on Structural Oversight. The charter framework for this section starts on page 4 of your briefing book. The Oversight Board's mission in the charter is to, quote, make recommendations regarding police practices, policies, and directives to the Portland Police Bureau, and with a primary focus on community concerns, end quote. The City Council tasked the Commission with developing a detailed explanation of how the Oversight Board will propose direct changes to police policies and directives. The charter further discusses a process where the Oversight Board can propose changes to the Police Bureau, and if they should reject it, the Council, quote, must consider and vote to accept or reject the policy recommendations received from the board, end quote. And is Commissioner Faith here?
Hello, greetings, I'm here.
Oh, good, okay. Take it away, Commissioner Faith.
Hi, thank you all for your patience. My name is Faith Aiken, I use she, her pronouns. So as you can see, the purpose of the structural oversight is to ensure that there are fair standards that police officers can meet. The PAC agreed with Mayor Wheeler, and we listened when we heard that we need to ensure a high standard and that our process allows for community-led process to establish those standards through recommending policies and directives that officers would be held accountable to. The Commission developed a process where any community member can suggest making a policy recommendation, including board members. As our colleagues mentioned, the complaint process can lead to a policy review, such as if an investigation into a case of alleged officer misconduct finds that officers were in policy, but there's a concern about the policy itself. Next slide, please. We came up with a system where once a policy recommendation is proposed, there's opportunity for community review, input, discussion, and potential adoption. The board can also get support from PPB or oversight staff with research and policy development. Finally, the document explains that PPB must respond to policy change recommendations. If they disagree, the council must consider and vote on whether or not to implement the policy change, and this document helps explain that process.
This structure connects the complaint process to the policy process. It ensures that the staff audits complaints, large-scale events like the 2020 protests, and individual misconduct cases in order to show structural issues that directly lead into the policy review process. It allows the Oversight Board to make recommended changes to policy that center community concerns. Now we've discussed the powers and duties of the new system. We'll switch to discussing how the new system is set up, starting with board membership. For that, I'll pass it over to Commissioner Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Iona. Members of Council, Mayor Wheeler, my name is Casey Lewis. I use he, him pronouns, served as the co-chair of the structure and details phase, and am now serving alongside Commissioner Hussaini as a co-chair of the subcommittee for the broader system. So if you look in your briefing book, the charter framework for this section starts on page 15. There were clear parameters laid out by the charter on board membership. First, the board's members are community members and cannot include current or former police officers. Second, they are independent, appointed by City Council, but with the ability to exercise independent judgment. Third, the board retains the ability to hire and manage the director. Membership must include those from diverse communities and with diverse lived experiences, particularly those who have experienced systemic racism and those who have experienced mental illness, addiction, or alcoholism. As this could unduly burden the communities that have already been forced for years to take on the arduous work of advancing police accountability, the charter also mandates that the board must seek to remove barriers for board members to fully participate. Council tasked the Commission with determining the size of the Oversight Board, selection method, term length, quorum, method to ensure representation, and compensation levels. And I will pass to Commissioner Cameron to continue. Commissioner Cameron is in the maternity ward right now, so I will be continuing. The Commission defined independent judgment as required by the City Council as a demonstrable absence of real or perceived influence from law enforcement, political actors, and other special interests looking to affect the operations of the civilian oversight agency. This definition is squarely in line with national and international standards of independence for civilian oversight of law enforcement. The PAC envisions a community oversight board that is all volunteer. This means a larger oversight board, 33 members with at least 5 alternates, to ensure diversity and also that each individual volunteer is not overburdened with the work. We envision 3-year renewable terms that are staggered to ensure institutional memory. We also want to maintain institutional memory by having peer training in addition to staff-facilitated training for new members. Members will need to live, work, play, attend school, or worship in Portland, as with any other city volunteer commitment, but will need to have done so for at least a year prior to appointment. Some of the desired skill sets for members include experience with police accountability, investigations and auditing, working with the houseless community members, and community outreach. The Police Accountability Commission wrote that the Oversight Board will be a unique type of volunteer service, different from most volunteer boards, committees, and commissions. Individual members will face unique challenges, including time commitment, exposure to trauma, and risks to privacy and safety associated with their service. The board shall create systems supporting and protecting individual members. This includes a compensation structure for board members, which we'll talk about in more detail later in this presentation, that recognizes their volunteer status while maximizing the accessibility of service on this board and promoting equity. It also includes being supportive of members' mental health, since members of the board may have to watch body camera footage or read case files describing traumatic events. Finally, we drafted a structure that has either reimbursement or payment up front for things like trainings a member might participate in, food, childcare, and more, to ensure that there isn't a cost to a community member who wants to volunteer to be on the oversight board. Next, we will talk about the work of the Subcommittee on Oversight staff, which I will pass along to Commissioner Tim.
Thank you. The charter framework for this section starts on page 18 of your briefing book. The charter creates a staff under a director, and this staff must include administrative staff and investigators. The director makes operational and administrative decisions, is a bureau director, and reports to the board, who hires and manages them. It also includes a framework that investigators must be independent, prompt, fair, and impartial. The document also includes some broad information about the budget, which is at a minimum 5% of the PPB budget, and the physical office, which must be located outside of a PPB facility. Is Commissioner Ajay with us this morning? I have them down to here.
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Sorry about that. I am Commissioner Ajay Mechi, and I was a subcommittee chair for oversight staff. So to continue, so slide 45, for hiring and managing the director, the PAC developed a process where board members can engage other community members. First, a review group will narrow down applicants to at least 3 candidates to interview, then the full board will interview the candidates and decide to hire one. There are limited reasons that would be cause to remove a director, and the board can conduct performance reviews regularly. The director qualifications are modeled off of the qualifications for the IPR director currently in City Code. Staff, moving to slide 46. Staff will have responsibilities including policy, mediation, investigation, support for members, community engagement, auditing, data analysis, equity and inclusion, and administration. Although there are staff and they will do important work, the goal is that the oversight board is facilitating a participatory process, public process for police oversight, and that this is not a staff-driven process, but rather one where it's community-driven and employs qualified staff to help community members on the board to do their jobs. The system will also retain a lot of the current best practices, like hiring contractors such as the OIR group to review deadly force incidents and being able to go to the scene of officer-involved shootings. When developing the staff structure, the subcommittee on oversight staff crunched some numbers to be sure that hiring the staff envisioned to make new system work would fit within the budget assigned in the charter, including administrative costs, staff, and board compensation. We believe it all to be possible. Passing it back to Catherine.
Thank you. Like IPR, and as the charter says, the director is a bureau director. The new oversight board will be a bureau within the city, similar to Prosper Portland in its independence and board leadership. The oversight board will have a defined budget and go through the budget process each year, but with a charter mandated floor of 5% of the PPB budget as its budget. And it will have an independent office to ensure both officers and community members are comfortable in the oversight board space. Also, the PAC wants to ensure that this office is open longer than 9 to 5. We're not prescribing specific hours, but we want to be sure that it's available, accessible, and convenient for everyone involved in the process. Next up is our reporting and transparency section, and I'll hand it over to Christian.
Thank you, Catherine. Can everybody hear me all right? Cool. My name is Christian. I was a full co-chair, full commission co-chair for the powers and duties phase. And I am also currently a full commission co-chair for our current phase. The charter framework for the section we're going to cover now is starts on page 20 of your briefing book. The charter requires that the board shall make provisions for regular and open meetings, public transparency, and reporting on the board's activities. Council also required us at the Police Accountability Commission to explain the transparency of the process, including reports to council, reports to the public, openness of the meetings to the public, and investigation information available to the public. I'll pass it over to Commissioner Debbie for the next part.
Yeah, I was one of the co-chairs of the Reporting and Transparency Subcommittee. And the Oversight Board will have meetings and also have hearings specific to individual allegations of misconduct. Those meetings will be open to the public and open to public comment. The PAC envisions that the board will meet with its staff director regularly and also host the mayor, chief of police, and other public safety officials regularly at its public meetings. The PAC envisions a comprehensive annual report that the board can also do smaller regular reports, such as quarterly reports. The annual report would include an overview of the system, information and resources about the system, the board, and a summary of its work. It would also include policy recommendations and outcomes, including follow-ups and responses from PPB and the City Council. It would include information on community outreach efforts. Finally, it will have complaint data presented in a variety of ways. That includes information about investigations, findings, discipline imposed, and timeliness to the extent allowable by law.
The Oversight Board will publish raw data for download and for display on dashboards with personal identifiable information redacted. The Police Accountability Commission envisions a system where confidentiality is respected while promoting transparency, generally in the board's operations. Transparency includes accessibility, culturally specific and translated materials, as well as meetings to walk through the reports for community members with an interest in learning more. That concludes reporting and transparency. I'll pass it over to staff for information on implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So when this work session was originally being developed as part of the conversations from January to March around the timeline, the question was raised about having an understanding of the destination of this process. And so all of that together is the PAC's draft destination based on feedback received so far, and with the ideal being that more council feedback could help this be refined and improved before the end of the process in a few months. On last week, there were also some questions raised about how this whole process is implemented. Some of that we can answer here because it's written in the settlement agreement. and some of it we can't because it's currently in development by the PAC in the ongoing process. We mentioned that the destination is the part that we're able to present, but the how we get there is this current phase of work that they're actively in. So the parameters in the settlement agreement are on page 22. It's paragraphs 195B and C. The PAC is currently set to end meetings on August 31st of this year. Following that, there's 60 days for council to review those and develop amendments to the settlement agreement, which would allow for the implementation of the oversight board. During this time, the council doesn't yet make final decisions on those PAC recommendations, but instead just drafts the settlement agreement parameters for it. And that's what's in the settlement agreement now, and that's the upper right-hand box on the slide. After that comes the DOJ and court review. The settlement agreement does not give a deadline for the review, so we don't know how long this will take. Based on some educated guesswork and talking to the DOJ, our working assumption for the PAC is that this will take somewhere in the 6 to 7 months timeline, and that's the lower left box. After the review by the US DOJ and US court, the process returns to City Council. Our understanding is if that the proposed agreements, proposed changes to the settlement agreement are changed in any way through this process, that there'd be an ordinance that finalizes the settlement agreement amendments. And then at that stage is where, under the settlement agreement, the PAC's code change recommendations would be voted on. And that's the lower right box. At that point, the oversight board exists, but it doesn't yet have members or staff or the ability to start doing work. So in the settlement agreement, again, there's a 1-year ramp-up period where the oversight board has to go from a nominally existing entity to a fully functional entity, and that's the part that's currently under development by the PAC, so we don't have the details yet on that. But we do know it'll include council appointment of the first oversight board members, the oversight board hiring the first director, and the director hiring at least enough investigators to get started. Under the settlement agreement, this can take up to a year, which means that all new complaints will go to the new oversight board by July 1st, 2025 at latest. And everything on these slides is not something that was developed by the PAC. This is something that was negotiated between the city and the DOJ and placed into the settlement agreement in April 2022. Moving to the budget overview now. This information is both on the slide and on page 23. The charter mandates that the oversight board get a budget of no less than 5% of the PPB budget. This indexing is not unique. City of Rochester and City of Chicago both index to a percentage of their police budgets too, among others, and Chicago will have a significantly larger oversight budget than Portland will as a result. Portland's is estimated, given current PPB funding levels, to be at around $12.45 million a year. However, this isn't all new spending. We know some parts of the current system will be phased out as part of the implementation of this, and the PAC may recommend sunsetting more. The PAC is working on this during the current phase and has already identified over half of the spending that could be sunsetted to offset the $12.45 million that would be part of the oversight budget. The other budget information that we wanted to share was related to board member compensation, and for that I'll welcome back Commissioner Casey.
Thank you, Samir. So as we noted before, the PAC is proposing an all-volunteer board, but volunteers are eligible to receive monetary compensation in the form of a nominal fee. With the existence of legal advice working with the city attorney's office, the PAC is approaching this from the perspective of maximizing the compensation that a board member can receive while still remaining a volunteer.
And if I can just pause you for 1 second. We're having difficulty with the screen share of it. It's not displaying it, but it is on, the spreadsheet is in the briefing book, just so you can see it. It starts on page 25. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. This will ensure both equity and accessibility to service on the board and representation of the different communities required under the charter. Because in our discussions with groups and others who have come to us, one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten is that it's impossible to be truly representative of the whole population if members are expected to give so many hours of labor without compensation. So this structure is necessary to fulfill the charter obligations that we have for board membership. Members of the board would receive a small stipend, but would also receive an hourly rate that's about 20% of the hourly rate of a similarly tasked staff member for significantly fewer hours. We have some estimates in math here, but our estimated range is between $3,200 per year and $7,400 per year. The average there is our working assumption that a board member would be compensated around $5,314 a year. Collectively, we're talking about under $200,000 in direct member compensation for the full board. For reference, this is less than 0.1% of the police budget for the people who are on the Community Police Oversight Board. It's about 1.4% of the oversight budget and leaves an additional 8% for other forms of member support, such as security at public meetings or high-profile hearings, trainings, or mental health support. $5,314 isn't enough to live off of. It is under half the federal poverty level and less than a tenth of the average salary in Portland. It's something we wish could be higher, but which is the maximum allowable under law for volunteers and will still have an impact in promoting equity, accessibility, representation, and fair treatment for our members. Finally, it's in the middle of the ranges of various other jurisdictions that compensate their civilian oversight systems. We identified several other cities and counties around the county that compensate, running a range from $3,000 to $15,000 a year. A few other higher compensating structures are in the process of being implemented as well.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Casey. Finally, just to note, the 5,314 is the average of the upper and lower end of the range. It would probably fall, if a weighted average was implemented, a little bit lower than that. Switching gears here, just going to start by talking about the what's next for the PAC and what's coming up. That's our final section of this presentation. The slides that I'm getting put up here you have seen before. They're the ones of the phases of work. Let's just get that going down here, sorry. So that the PAC is currently working on the transition plan, how the new oversight board will relate to the broader system, which also includes identifying how that one-year ramp-up process works, as well as what other offsets can be identified for the budget. We definitely heard the concern, and the members heard it from last week about a large amount of new spending, and that's part of the current conversations that the PAC might be able to help council with that process. After that, it'll move into the last phase, the concluding phase, where council feedback, community feedback, and more will be integrated into these draft documents, and with the help of legal counsel, they'll be converted into final code change language for proposal to you in August. Two last points on this before we open it up. The first is a request from the members to the City Council, and for that, I'm going to pass it over to Commissioners Tim and Catherine.
Thank you. On May 4th, the PAC requested by consensus that the City Council fund the PAC-specific staff positions for this fiscal year. This includes the PAC Engagement and Communications Coordinator and the PAC Research and Policy Coordinator, both of whom you met early on in this presentation. This funding is not yet included in the budget for next fiscal year, and we'd ask that they be fully funded through when the council votes on the PAC's final recommendations, estimated to be next June. Commissioner Catherine?
So I see that Commissioner Charlie is still here. I know, would you like to take this over?
Unfortunately, I don't have the remainder of the readings available to me.
No worries, I will take it over then.
Thank you.
No problem. I just want to say that we are all volunteers and we rely on having staff support to do the work we need to do. While the PAC or the PAC is still meeting, staff support is necessary to making volunteers feel like the work can be successful and to ensuring that we know everything that's going on and where we can be most helpful. We will also need staff help afterwards to coordinate communications and ensure that the public is aware of what the proposals from the PAC are and what they mean to the community.
So thank you for considering our request, and thank you also for your support for the process so far.
So this will conclude the presentation, and we're going to open it up to any questions or comments or conversation that you have. Thank you so much for the patience that you've had as we've gone through the 6 interlocking parts of the new system that the PAC has drafted. Again, our goal out of this process is to receive council feedback so that these can be improved upon, refined, and made to be something that can work for the city council, work for the city after the PAC stops meeting. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you for the rest of the work session and beyond.
Great. I'll be honest, I couldn't hear all that. I think, is this where you wanted the council to chime in?
Yes.
Very good, colleagues. I'll just reiterate for the record, we had the report, was that last week? It was just last week. I put a number of concerns on the record. I won't restate them here, but those still stand. Have you given any further thought to, there's some legal aspects and you may not have gotten to this stage yet in the development of your proposal, and if that's the case, I certainly understand it. But the part around compelling testimony, that's something we talked about last week. It was one of the issues that I highlighted. Have you given thought to how that would work and what legal standard you would use to compel testimony?
So I think what might be helpful to note here is that the commission has received approval to hire outside legal counsel, and that process is in the final stage of contracting, and then that individuals plus the city attorney's office are going to help with the refining of all of this. So that might be the first thing to note here. I'm not sure if any of the other members who maybe have a legal background would like to add to where it's at present, but it's definitely, yeah.
I think the only thing that I would add to that is, as we noted in some parts of our presentation, the current system already has mechanisms for compelling testimony, and we're really not looking to reinvent the wheel in terms of things that are already working well. Our focus is on streamlining and simplifying the system, and so we will be consulting with our independent legal counsel to determine the best way to make sure that whatever system we use to compel testimony fits into all of the necessary state law, the necessary federal law, and obligations under collective bargaining. But I don't think that this is an area where we think that we are making any particularly significant changes to how business is currently done.
All right, now I assume you're looking at other jurisdictions as well that have
Yes.
similar systems. Very good. I'll look forward to the more detailed presentation on that when you get to that stage. Has there any thought been given to maintaining the confidentiality of evidence or video or other information that members might be privy to that are subject to privacy rules or regulations or are part of ongoing investigations by the district attorney or others?
Yes, thank you for that question. So it's under the document on access to information. There are, the general framework is that if the oversight board would have access to any PPB records or records that PPB would have access to, that the same level of confidentiality would apply. And then there are some specifics to that, but the basic idea is that the oversight board would respect that as a default. Whatever the level of confidentiality is in terms of public disclosure. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Great, it just strikes me as a potentially very thorny area, and it's one of the areas I raised the other day. If there's an ongoing investigation, for example, in the district attorney's office, my guess is they're not going to want to necessarily share with a large public body the information that they're currently working with. And then could you help me just understand, I know you got into this and I'm not sure I fully digested it. Can you tell us a little more about due process? Tell me about due process. Because one is still presumed innocent until demonstrated to be otherwise. Tell me how due process will work in this process.
Well, maybe I will jump in and just say that that is something we considered as we were in the officer accountability, work that we did. We looked at the current system and the review processes available to officers, and looked at what would be required to ensure that we, the current protections for folks who are accused of misconduct would continue in the current system as required by law. So we have, a unified system, complaint, hearing, consideration of discipline, and then a review process. So that's the basic process. The review process, both the hearing process and the review process ensure at least the basic amount of due process that anyone in an administrative process is entitled to. But beyond that, we have ensured that the additional protections that officers have continue in terms of the Garrity hearing, the ability to file a grievance and pursue remedies under collective bargaining, and then the civil service avenues available to folks. So those are really fixed
And all of that is retained.
It's all retained. I mean, we have educated ourselves well enough to have included those specific things in the system. We understand they're going to be required. We've had briefings from the city attorney around those issues. So we have that. But then I think, as I mentioned when we were here last week, we also have really quite carefully said, to the extent allowable by law or as required by law, due process rights will continue. So we're looking forward in our sixth phase, reviewing all of this with council, and to the extent we need to either add something or take something away to ensure that all due process requirements are met by the system. I guess I want to say I can assure you that, we have that built in the process now. We have that legal review coming. So what we'll present to you in August, we'll have that box checked.
Thank you. And one last question for me. In the early slides, there was a number of individuals and leaders that were identified as having been interviewed. I'm curious now, have you met with frontline police officers to get their perspective on this, since you're striving to create a fair and balanced system? And I'm wondering if you've had the opportunity to interact with those who would be potentially subjected to this disciplinary system.
So thank you for that question. I think I might want to pass that over to Director Myers. The question was about meeting with frontline police officers. I don't know if you can hear us. Yeah.
I can hear you, and the answer is no, Mayor. We have not started that process. I think that is a cooperative agreement, probably with the labor representative, on the opportunity to meet with membership and poll them about their issues, and it would take some opportunity to actually educate them on where we're at and what we're doing, and that has not been done to my knowledge. It is a good recommendation if that's one you're making.
Yeah, and it's consistent with what I said last week or 2 weeks ago, or whenever we met, that this whole process hinges upon legitimacy. And I won't go back through all my talking points on that, but I would argue that this is an important aspect of legitimacy.
Yes. And I think the police chief and labor representatives would probably agree with you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Commissioner Rubio.
So thanks for the presentation. I just have a couple questions. I'm not sure, maybe you said it, but I didn't hear it. Can you talk a little bit about the structure? You talked about the ED would be overseen by the board. So how do you envision that relationship then to the city as a city entity, or is it quasi-city? Like, what's your thinking? I have other questions too.
Yeah, the question, I'm not sure if everyone on Zoom could hear, I saw a couple of people, was how the board membership, which oversees the director, how that process would work. And so I'm not sure if anyone wants to jump in and answer that question first. I'm not sure if that's why, Commissioner Debbie, you were raising your hand.
Well, I can take a try at that. Was going to follow up on something that Mayor Wheeler brought up. So the PDC board, I'm sorry, I'm still calling it the PDC. The Prosper Portland board works that way. My understanding is from reading the charter on that is they select the director and supervise them. And so this would kind of be a similar model to that, where the board has this level of independence and oversees the agency itself. So I hope that answers that question.
And
The mayor appoints the director of Prosper Portland. That's why, that's my question. So this would be
so this is
different?
something that's, I should note that this wasn't a PAC decision. This is something that's in the charter, that the board membership shall hire a director to manage the professional administrative staff and professional investigators, that the director is a bureau director and shall be appointed by and serve at the will and pleasure of the board, and then that all the other staff will be appointed by and served by under the director's classified employees. So the idea is that, and it's written into the document, that all existing human resources rules would be followed on that process. The process of scaling, having at least 3 interviews and doing that process is a hybrid of, I believe, the current IPR system in some places and a couple best practices from other jurisdictions. Most notably Denver. I want to kick that to Debbie if that's correct. I think it's Denver, but I can double check it. So that, I guess that's the broad framework. There's provisions for regular meetings and reviews, the management reviews, performance reviews, that is the word I cannot remember. I'm not sure if anyone else wanted to jump in. Debbie, if you still have your hand up?
Oh, so I was just going to say, in Oakland, their board hires the director and can also fire them. So it is done, and we'd have to do more searching for other jurisdictions, but there are, in other jurisdictions, there's definitely a lot of involvement in some cases of board members in selecting the director.
Casey, you
Well, I think, Commissioner Rubio, that you've identified sort of one of the essential tensions in the work that's happening here, and something that there's been a lot of discussion with among our members, is the fact that we're trying to find a way to balance having a board that is truly community and civilian-led, and having people who are from the community are not necessarily going to be leaving their jobs to do this work, are still going to be bringing the experiences of their community with them, and at the same level maintaining the level of professionalism and the level of experience that we need for them to be able to feel supported and to do the work well. And so that's something that we've really tried to incorporate throughout the system, is to have the people ultimately be the ones who are in charge, but then give them the support and structure to be able to implement what they're hearing. And again, ultimately, they're all going to be appointed by City Council, so there's sort of the ultimate democratic protections of the people will choose their councilors, the councilors will choose the board, and then the board will decide who's going to be sort of running things under them.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, I'm not questioning the premise at all. I'm just trying to understand the operationalization.
Certainly.
As you've outlined it. And because I used to run a nonprofit, so that's sort of where my brain goes. And connected to that, so following that, what you just talked about, then would then the committee would be hired first, so to hire the staff, or how would that work?
Yeah,
Committee appointed first, and then who appoints the committee?
Yeah, so the board's membership is appointed entirely by council as a whole under the charter. The board can then choose to create a subset of members to evaluate applications for a director. I think part of what the PACs had to deal with on a lot of issues is how much should the PAC decide for the oversight board versus saying there's going to be a board, you figure out some of the details of your own operations. And so in this particular case, what's known is that there'll be a board appointed by council, and that board will hire the director. If they want to do it in a subcommittee, they'll probably end up doing that on an ongoing basis, but it's not required of them. And so, council will choose the best members to be on the oversight board, and then the oversight board will follow this process to determine the best possible director.
So the appointees will then conduct all the hiring then for the staff.
Yeah, and I imagine they'll engage with experts to be on the interview panels, you know, in addition within the city. That's a best practice we've seen across many of the bureaus right now.
I just want to add that we are currently designing the transition plan that's required by the charter amendment. And one of the things we're looking at is just how this is all going to work sequentially. I mean, we need to have at least some board members to be able to select the director, because the director is charged with hiring the staff. And so I think we start here with city council appointing at least a base number of members of the board who can then hire the director, who can then hire the staff. And so that's, I think, the way the sequence will work, whether you end up appointing the full board, right, you know, at the beginning before we have a director in place. That, you know, we're sorting that out right now in terms of that one-year transition plan we need to design and present to you.
As well as, you know, I know that when it comes to following up with you guys in our second quarterly report, a lot of what we're talking about in our transition plan and broader systems will also cover a lot of this. We are in phase 5 out of a total of 6 phases. So we look forward to making sure that we're not only listening to what you are offering, but a lot of this is going to be covered even in Q2.
Follow up to Commissioner Rubio's question, and I think you started to answer it, and maybe you did answer it, Catherine, and that is, first of all, was the governance structure in the details of what the voters approved? Like this conversation we're having right now, did it get into that granular detail?
Yes, in terms of these critical pieces about who appoints the members of the board, who hires the director, and who hires the staff. So those critical pieces are all within the charter.
And then I think I heard on a day-to-day basis, it's the board who's responsible for the supervision of the staff, of the director?
I think that is within the director's authority. So it's, you know, as you would expect in sort of a typical nonprofit, the board oversees the director oversees the staff.
And so, and then you were just speaking to the city manager. So we'll have a city manager, and what will their influence be on the board? Have you had that conversation?
I'm going to look to Samir, who's my city advisor.
I realized that was passed after this one was passed, right?
Yeah, so the transition plan developing part of the PAC is has identified some folks they wanted to talk to and learn about how it's going to work. And for example, the folks that are involved in the charter transition is a big list of that to try and just get a handle on how they're envisioning that role to help answer that question. I think that there's a, you know, the city administrator will have, you know, certain administrative rules and things like that that they develop. All of that will apply. There'd be the same public safety administrative rules that are specific, just like IPR has, but that at minimum that much. And then I think the rest is still under development and hopefully talking. If you have advice on how to approach that, there are a couple models that we've seen around the city, but would love to hear more. And certainly this hasn't been implemented yet, so it's theoretical models at this point, or models in the current pre-charter change.
Thanks. I just wanted to jump in on Commissioner Rubio's governance questions.
And it does say that the charter says that the director will make operational and administrative decisions. So I think day to day, we would be seeing a system where the director is not having to go to the board for every small scale decision, but has general direction and then is managing things. Very similar to how a nonprofit might have a board involved in strategic planning and things like that. The details of that are something the board itself would have to work out, though.
No, I get that. Both Commissioner Rubio and I have a lot of experience in nonprofit leadership. You know, the obvious difference is this is all money, revenue from the taxpayer, so it's different than a nonprofit.
I have a couple of questions about the complaint process. So what kind of workload is anticipated for the advocates?
I think this might be
How
something.
many cases? Like what's the caseload assumption?
I think this might be something someone on Zoom could answer about the caseload assumptions. I don't know if Commissioner Dan, if you wanted to take that one, or if you prefer us to answer it here.
Dan,
You're muted.
Commissioner Handelman, you're on mute.
Okay, I just need to pull up some research. If you can ask another question, and I'll answer that in a moment.
Yeah, Dan, I don't need it today, but the question is what is the anticipated caseload for the advocates, and also what are the base qualifications to be an advocate, if I could get that as a
Okay, well, I mean, honestly, I think what we're thinking of is having a number of advocates so that each of them would have a workload of, I think somewhere about 15 or 20 cases a year at the most, so that it would be spread out, and that they would come from different backgrounds, so that the people who were seeking to file complaints would have somebody that looks like them or has life experiences like them that they can talk to, but that they would all have equal training, so that anybody could handle a complaint, but the person who really wants to have an advocate that looks like has their life experience can find that person. We're kind of leaving it up to the board and staff to decide if those advocates are going to be staff members or if they're going to be contractors of some kind, because they're probably not going to be full time based on how often you're going to need to touch with your clients over the course of the case.
Okay.
Answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So you're not anticipating any legal or investigative requirements for those advocates? It's mostly based on lived experience?
Well, and of course, knowledge of the system and how the system works and what the laws are. But yeah, basically, these are people who can help somebody navigate their way through. The investigations are all being done by the investigators.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I have a question about the 180-day timeline. How is that going to work with parallel district attorney investigations or witnesses who are potentially on extended leave? How do you anticipate navigating those two potential obstacles?
I believe we have a mechanism for good cause extension, if need be.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I believe that we have a mechanism for good cause extension. So we recognize that the 180 days should be the norm, and it should be, if at all possible, met. And at the same time, we recognize that these situations can be very complicated. And frankly, we recognize that issues can come up that we don't even anticipate. And we've really tried to incorporate that into all of our work. Is an understanding that we don't know what things are going to look like in 2 years when this is passed. We don't know what things are going to look like in 10 years when we are all hopeful that this system is still going to be going strong. And so we have tried to build a lot of flexibility into the system. So I think for something like that, rather than calling out individual sort of like, you can have an extension if there's an open case or if there's a witness missing, we've usually tried to use broader language, like just saying there is a mechanism for extension for good cause.
Okay, thank you for that. I had a question about the panels, the first panel, the second panel. Does the second panel's decision bind the first?
I think bind, I'm not sure if that's the word. It would supersede it in the sense of, in some cases, not in all. The way it's written right now, and any member feel free to jump in, is that the appeal panel could agree with the existing findings made by the original panel, or it could change them, or it could send it back for further investigation. So in at least 2 of those 3 cases, it wouldn't be binding or superseding it.
If I could get follow-up information on that, and I think I just heard you. So if further investigation is recommended, then does the second panel hear the case once it's complete, or is it referred back to the first panel? I think I just heard you say it's referred back to the first panel, but I want to make sure I understood that.
I'm going to need to verify there, Commissioner.
I can hop in on this one, actually. So ultimately, the first panel, the decision is only referred to the first panel if there is new information uncovered in the investigation. So we're not asking the first panel to revisit its decision based on just the request of one side or the other feeling that the decision has been unfair. That's what an appeals panel would be for. The only reason that a case would be re-referred to the initial panel is if there was additional information uncovered or provided that the first panel did not have access to at the time that their determination was made.
Okay. And if I could ask a slightly more refined version of a question I asked earlier, which gets to confidentiality. Obviously, the intention of the PAC is to hold public meetings. Transparency is a value that obviously you hold in high regard, but there are also laws regarding privacy, and there are investigative procedures that demand it. How are you planning to navigate that?
I think that's, again, you've identified one of the key tensions in the work that we're trying to do here, and I think that one that is going to require a lot of work and thoughtfulness on the part of the people implementing this and on the part of the people who are ultimately going to be part of this board. I think that, like you said, one of our key fundamental values that we've been operating under and that the charter change was created under is transparency. At the same time, we want to preserve all of the rights that currently exist under law and under the rights of employees to confidentiality. And so this is a place where we have built a lot of language into our areas of agreement stating that things will be transparent to the full extent allowable by law, to the full extent allowable under the practices and under collective bargaining, which would apply not just to current collective bargaining, but would then allow in future collective bargaining for that to be adjusted. So I think ultimately we are understanding our lane basically and saying that we are advocating for the fullest transparency available while not necessarily saying that we want to butt heads with any of the current systems or structures.
Good, and I appreciate that, and I will just wish for you fortitude, because one of the toughest parts of my job as police commissioner is maintaining that confidentiality as required by law and maintaining the sanctity of ongoing investigations while at the same time the public is absolutely calling for my head and screaming at me to disclose that information. That will be transferred to you. And so it's something I encourage you to give more consideration to. Thank you.
And Commissioner Faith might have more on this. I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you for the question. One thing that we discussed, particularly around sharing of data, is each complainant would be assigned like a case number. So you would be able to see, I'm complainant number 250, and we would be able to follow along the journey of where it is in the process of what's going on with complaint number 250, but we wouldn't have any personal identifiable information. We included language from the city around how we keep records safe. But we do want to redact, as Commissioner Christian mentioned, any identifiable information, but still be able to elevate as much information as we can share. And so someone could follow along of where someone is in the journey.
All right, I think we've come to the end of our questions. Thank you. This was a terrific presentation. I really appreciate you all coming in and being extremely well organized, both in terms of getting us the materials in advance as well as the presentation. I thank you, and thank you for answering the questions. Did you want to close this out?
I'm happy to let anyone else close it out. I just wanted to quickly mention that you may have heard a lot of the members talking about being co-chair of different things. The rotational leadership model that the commission has chosen has ended up with, so far, 18 members of the commission being a co-chair of something throughout this process. And various subcommittees, and you've also heard from 12 of the members here today. We've got a couple folks who are unable to join at this time, but I know they'd love to hear from you as well, and just wanted to make sure I was passing along from them the desire to continue the conversation. And thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll undoubtedly let some of this percolate, and I'll have further follow-up from today. I also want to have a chance to meet with my staff and others and go through some of the information we heard today, so there may be some follow-up to this as well. Thank you all. We're adjourned.